YouTube, what it do, tube? I am Dre. This is the Daily Output. And we're gonna watch a few minutes of this Tucker Carlson interview. I can't speak, my tooth, man. Oh my goodness. But enough about me. This interview with Tucker Carlson, and I didn't catch his name. But y'all are about to meet him. And it's talking about the Trump legal proceedings in this court case that was just held in New York. And like a lot of people say, this has pretty much been unprecedented. Former president being persecuted as much as he has, even prior presidents that's, I would say, has done more things that did not benefit our country. But let's jump into it real quick.
Of America. But Trump is at the center of the story. And so today, for an overview of what exactly the strategy to prevent Trump from running for president and to end our current system, we turn to Victor Davis Hanson, who joins us now. Professor, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
Before we get into the details of the legal assault on Trump, which in my view isn't really about Trump, tell us what you think is at stake here. What's the overview?
Well, I think they've come to the conclusion that Trump represented an existential threat, and by association, half the country did to their vision of what they want to transform us into. And so they feel that any means necessary are justified by their noble spiritual ends. And therefore, they call it critical legal theory. Just essentially, Tucker says, there's rules against stealing only because rich people don't steal, and therefore it's okay to steal. And modern monetary theory says print as much money, and eventually rich people will have to pay higher taxes or have their 401ks appropriated. Same thing with the border. Short term, everybody's mad at the border, but in dark rooms, they're saying to each other, in 10 years, everybody's going to appreciate what we did. We brought in 10 to 15 million new constituents. So, and I guess to put it all together, they feel that they're at a stage now where their agenda does not appeal to 51% of the people, and they either have to bring in new constituencies or change the system, the entire system of which we are acculturated to retain power, and that's what they're willing to do. And there's no such thing anymore as theft or lies or any of these things, because they're just constructs, and they're just anything that's useful to gain power is considered legitimate, and anything that's not useful is illegitimate, and that's how they define morality. And I think we're very naive, Tucker. We don't realize that we're in the middle of a revolution. We think that we're still playing within the same sidelines or parameters, and it's not. Everything's under negotiation, whether it's the Senate filibuster, the Electoral College, new states coming in, the size of the Supreme Court, voting IDs, the genders, the foundational data of the United States, pronoun usage, from the trivial to the existential. We're in the middle of a cultural, economic, political revolution, and I think we got to wake up.
I mean, I suppose the danger is that if...
I didn't mean to cut him off, but I forgot who said it, but the revolution will not be televised. I mean, portions of it, you can obviously, from his statements, are being televised. But another thing I want to question is, he said that they're trying to create a world that they envision. And would you agree that the world that they're trying to create will be better for us or not?
If the average person decides that the system is illegitimate, it's not fair, it doesn't have any meaning beyond the political desires of the people administering it, then what prevents the average person from resorting to violence? In other words, if you have no power, if your vote means nothing, if the system is BS, then why don't you take up arms? Seriously.
Well, two things I think have precluded that so far. One is, I call it the monastery of the mind. A lot of people just say, you know what, I'm checking out. I don't want to watch the Oscars. I don't even know what the Tonys or Emmys are. I don't watch the NBA. I have nothing to do with Hollywood movies. I just created my own reality. And the other is, under our federalist system, we're having millions of people. This is the greatest exodus diaspora we've ever seen in our history, where people are fleeing these blue states and blue cities to red states, and they feel that I'm going to recreate America as I once understood it without having anything to do. And so far that's kept us sort of viable, but for them that's not enough. It's never enough to have 2 million illegal entrants or 3 million. They got to have 8 or 9 or 10. It's not enough that Joe Biden is corrupt. It's not enough that he's non-compos mentis. It's not enough that his agenda doesn't make sense. You've got to accept more and more of him. And I think they keep pushing the envelope, and these safety valves that I just mentioned, I don't know if they're going to be enough already. But right now, I think there's one last effort on the part of conservatives. They're going to say, you know what, we're going to speak up as we've never spoken up before. We're going to go after Target. We're going to go after Disney. We're going to say that we're going to go after the 3-gender movement, and we're going to try to win this election. We're going to try to win the House. We're going to try to win the representative. We just have to unite behind, and we'll see if.
Sorry, I do not have premium.
See if that works.
But with that pause, we've had a influx of people coming from more blue territories, and I don't think, well, I'm pretty sure they realize why they are leaving those areas. Cost of living's much higher, violence, things of that nature. It's harder to get a concealed carry or have firearms, but with all that knowing in their mind, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know right now, but with all that in their mind, moving to a more red state or independent state, you would think that their voting habits would change and not bring with them what they were fleeing. fleeing. Let's continue.
I'm really afraid. Everybody says democracy's in danger, but I think if they feel that they have the majority of the people, and I think the majority of the people are against this progressive Jacobin agenda, and they still can't find power, then we're going to be in new territory. We're in new territory now. And so there are legitimate efforts to rectify and stop this madness, and let's see what happens in 2024. But I don't think it works anymore just to migrate to a red state or to drop out of the popular culture. You've got to get control of the political apparatus of the country through elections. And your worry is legitimate. If you can't do it through fair elections, then what do you do? So I think this election, I know everybody says that each election is paramount, but this one is very important because we're in the middle of a revolution, and it's our only avenue to a counter-revolution to return to normality.
What would you say to the people who stopped paying their cable bill and moved to Florida and feel like everything's fine because their neighborhood is fine? Why is that a bad strategy, dropping out and moving?
Because they can find you. And by that I mean Florida or Tennessee or living in Texas is a great advantage than living in California or Michigan or Oregon or Washington or Maryland. But eventually the federal government is not satisfied to leave you alone. And so when you go on your Google search, it will be calibrated by an algorithm to make sure that you have results that don't represent reality. And we're in a federal system where we have $33 trillion in debt, and there's only three ways to get out of it. You either have to inflate all of our currency, which we're trying to do, I suppose, or we're going to have to appropriate capital, which they've talked about, giving credit to Social Security years by taking 401k money, or you're going to have to renounce the debt, and that's going to affect all of us. And I don't need to mention that a lot of this crime is going across state lines, and you can be in red state Texas, and the federal government can say you can't protect the Texas border, or maybe it can redefine the American border as the border with Oklahoma and tell it Texas, you're not sending your illegals northward, but you're not going to be able to stop them coming into your state because we've targeted you for radical demographic change. So it's a stopgap sanctuary, but it shouldn't lull us into the idea that it's a solution. The solution is to take back the Congress, to ensure the Supreme Court is a traditional Supreme Court, and to win the presidency. But unfortunately, the Republican Party, which we all look to, I don't look to it very much anymore, has lost 7 out of the last 8 popular votes, hasn't won 51% since George H.W. Bush did it by bringing in Lee Atwater in 1988. And then we decided we don't want to ever win that way again. It was too ugly, they thought. So I guess the idea in the national level is to win, to lose nobly and never to win ugly. But we've got to change that attitude because we're dealing with people that are not democratic liberals in the way that we used to define them as Bill Clinton or Harry Truman or JFK. This is a new generation of, as I said, Jacobins, and they believe that any means necessary are justified morally to achieve their morally superior aims.
What happens if Democrats win the presidency in 2024?
If they win the presidency, that means they'll keep the Senate and they'll probably take back the House. And then I would expect that we would see another 10 or 15 million illegal immigrants come across the border, and there would be efforts to confine those immigrants from going to northern cities. They would stop them somehow. I would assume that we would probably have advisors in Ukraine, and that would be charitable. I think people really do want to intervene in Ukraine with U.S. manpower. I would assume that what we see in the big cities crime-wise would extend, but it would also extend into the civil sphere as we see with Donald Trump. That lawsuit that you mentioned is very important, Tucker, because it shows you that critical legal theory is not happy just to let people ransack, smash and grab, carjacking without consequences. They really do want to go after private capital in the civil sector, and they will start filing lawsuits as you wouldn't believe. And I think we'd also expect that the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ would have a referendum. I guess they would think the election was a referendum on them, and they're free to do what they have been doing, but at an accelerated rate. So I think it would be a disaster.
I'm going to have to continue this later because for some reason I want to say my account only holds up to about 15 to 16 minutes. So I will continue this tomorrow, and like, comment, subscribe, add your opinions, thoughts on this, and we'll do part 2 tomorrow. Daily output